welcome to the meeting of Cabinet on Thursday 6th of March 2025. Going straight on to the agenda, we have one apologies for absence from Councillor Devlin. Item number 2, declarations of interest. Are there any? None. So moving on to item number 3, General Fund Capital Programme, and this will be taken by Paul. There you are, Paul. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Chair. The report presents a position statement of the General Fund capital expenditure as at the 31st of December and the forecast to the year end. The report shows a shortfall in resource of 362,000 or 0.8% of the resources available and is within manageable limits. Sections 9 and 10 of the report set out the details of the various movements in the current year's programme, which Cabinet is invited to approve. These mainly relate to revised project timing. The forecast expenditure for the year has reduced by 5.7 million since the previous report to Cabinet in December. Both borrowing and the use of the capital reserve have been deferred to align with this. The projected level of capital expenditure still significantly exceeds that typically incurred by the Council in previous years. The Cabinet is invited to note the report and approve the changes within. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. I'll open this up to questions. Councillor Pragnell.
Thanks, Paul, for the report. It's just on the Maidenhill Primary School extension. Given that we are now in March, has the main construction works begun?
Yes, at that, the extension, the contract is now in place, the contractor is on site and work has started.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of questions. The first one is specifically about the railway station, and it talks about there's not a specific date. Is it possible? Do we have a start date yet on that?
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. We have no specific date as yet, but understand that the legal agreement is now in place and that a programme of works is to be agreed with Network Rail, and hopefully they're aiming to start that over the summer months.
If I can just build on that, Paul's absolutely correct, but just to give a little bit more detail, the rebus stages, the final rebus stages of design are now being undertaken by Story Construction. We hope that they will go on site around about May, June time and complete around about June 2026.
No, that's fine. It's because it says 25, 26 in the paper. So I was worried it was going to be beyond the end of the year.
No, it's progressing well, and we expect it to start this summer.
Thanks. That's great. Because there was something else actually about the education CCTV and with supply chain issues, and there are a number of sites. Is to quantify, are the majority of them going to be okay, or is it possible for anyone to shed light on, what the balance is, the sites that won't be finished yet?
Yeah, there are a number of sites. I think we have placed orders for a number of sites. We will start some of those sites, and some of those sites will complete this financial year. I think St Cadoc's springs to mind, but there are further sites. There are more sites to be delivered this year. But there will be more. It will actually carry on into the next financial year.
By more, just a couple, or?
I don't actually have the exact number of sites, but what I can do is I can get that information and I can circulate that to members of the Cabinet in an email.
Much appreciated, because it is obviously extremely important for the education sites. If anything occurs on them, it's an early warning system effectively for us. And it'd be good to know if we can quantify.
Thank you.
There are no other questions. Just a comment from myself. Note the 5 million reduction. This is a familiar story, but it looks as if we're getting to a closer final projection of what the final spend is in the year, which I think you say is broadly similar to what we had in terms of total capital expenditure in the previous year. So that's something for us to be mindful of in terms of capacity. Is that the capacity or not? Something we can come up to in future meetings, if that makes sense. But with that, very good news on Balgrave rail station. I think we're all looking forward to that. So unless there's no other comments from members, can we agree this report? Agreed. Thank you very much. So if we can move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the item number 4, Housing Capital Programme, and this is going to be taken by Paul again. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Chair. Similar to the previous item, this report measures the capital expenditure at 31st of December and provides a forecast to the year end, but this time for the Housing Capital Programme. The report shows a shortfall in resource of 119,000, representing 0.5% of the available resources. The forecast expenditure for the year has reduced by 1.4 million since the previous report to Cabinet in December. Sections 8 and 9 of the report set out the various movements in the current year's programme which Cabinet is invited to approve. The expenditure movement mainly relates to revised project timing, and again the drawdown from the capital reserve and the use of commuted sums has been amended to align with this. The Cabinet is invited to note the report and approve the transfers within the programme. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. Any questions? Councillor Pragnell.
It's just on the external structural works. It says in the report that this has been delayed due to poor weather conditions, and it mentions that the work will be completed in the new financial year. Have any of the work started?
Thank you, Councillor Pragnell. Yes, the contract was on site in November and work has been progressing since then. We were aiming originally to complete the work by the end of March, but unfortunately the contract is going to carry on into April, possibly May, but it should be completed early part of the new year.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Paul, no further comments from me, apart from housing capital seems to be much closer aligned to original budget than the main general fund. That's more of an observation than anything else. So with that, are we happy to recommend to agree the recommendations in this paper? Agreed. Thank you very much. And moving on to the next item on the agenda, which is item 5, the Carbon Emissions Report 23-24, and Andy Dick's going to take us through this paper. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you. The purpose of this report is to bring to Cabinet details of the carbon emissions from the Council's operations in 23-24, bring an introduction to area-wide carbon emissions, including results for East Renfrewshire, and outline progress towards the Council's 2045 net zero carbon emissions target. A reminder, there is a requirement under the Climate Change Duties Act for all public bodies to report annually on emissions from their operations, which is why we bring this report to Cabinet. The total emissions, excluding supply chain emissions for 23-24, was 13,347 tonnes of CO2 equivalent. This is a 76 tonne reduction from the previous year and a total reduction of 7,000 tonnes from the baseline year of 2019-20. When comparing carbon emissions to the previous year, there's been very little change. Gas use and the resulting emissions are down by 0.73%. Electricity use actually decreased by 3.6%, but because of the carbon intensity of the national grid, as a result of more gas being used in the grid following the energy crisis in 2022, emissions have actually increased slightly for electricity by 2.6%. Looking to the future, the Council has set a target of achieving net zero emissions by 2045. To meet that target, the Council must reduce its operational emissions to 0 tonnes of CO2 equivalent. For 2019 and 20, emissions needed to reduce by an estimated 850 tonnes of carbon every year until 2045. And if we exclude waste management emissions, which are likely to remain quite stable as a result of the long-term nature of the Clyde Valley Waste Partnership contract, emissions have reduced by 503 tonnes of CO2 since the 1920 baseline year. This indicates East Renfrewshire Council will not reach its target without taking further action. The report also introduces area-wide emissions, and the nature of area-wide emissions are those that are from the community, so the homes and businesses and the vehicles that move through the council area. There is a 4-year delay in reporting on that data. The data is provided by the UK government mainly. And for the last year that we are able to report, which is 2020, there was 476,000 tonnes of CO2 equivalent, and they have reduced by around 23.6% since 2017, which is clearly a move in the right direction. In terms of future actions that the Council is taking, there are a number of things that have happened that will positively impact on emissions reductions in the coming year and the years ahead. The first of those I would draw attention to is the new Neilson Learning Campus, which opened its doors in February 2024, which we expect to bring roughly a 1.3% reduction in total operational emissions. The Council's commitment to build the new Eastwood Leisure Centre to a very high energy efficiency standard and utilise a clean heating system will also bring benefits that we expect to represent a 3.9% reduction in total operational emissions. And the closure of the Spears Bridge office and the consolidation of staff within Council headquarters in Eastwood, we expect to bring a 0.3% reduction in operational emissions. So all of those will positively contribute in the following years. So the recommendations to Cabinet are to note the Council's operational emissions for the year 23-24, to note the first reporting period for area-wide emissions for East Renfrewshire, and to note the projects and actions across the Council that have had a positive impact on climate change to date.
Thank you very much, Andy. I'll open it up to questions. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the report, Andy. It's very comprehensive. There was one particular paragraph, 13, and it was about the decarbonisation of the national grid, and there is a trend there. And can you quantify, or do you know how much significantly the trend is going to continue, and what the potential impact that it could have on the Council? Thanks.
Sure. The National Grid aims to be net zero by 2050, and there are recent moves to suggest that that might accelerate ahead of that. What that means for the Council is that if we do absolutely nothing, we will benefit from the reduction in the carbon intensity in the National Grid, but that only affects the electricity part of our operational emissions. The bigger chunk of emissions is tied up with gas, and the real drive is to get off gas and get off internal combustion engines, and that's where the real benefits will come.
Okay, thank you.
Andy, I'm going to follow up on that, and it's on paragraph 9. So obviously in terms of total emissions, relative modest reduction this year, even though electricity use went down by 3.6%, we're not getting the benefit of that because the mixture of the grid actually went against the trend in that year. So are we going to see that sort of picture reverse a little bit over the next couple of years?
Yes, in short, that was very much bucking the trend. The trend over the last 10 years has been very much a reduction, and because of the war in Ukraine, we did see a spike of gas use in that particular year, but we are seeing that coming back down again.
Thanks very much, Andy. What's also clear from the report is it's getting harder and harder each year to progress, but that it's not all doom and gloom. Glad you highlighted the investment in the Leisure Trust at Eastwood Leisure and Theatre, and this HQ and Spears Bridge, Neilson campus. So the new builds are actually going to have relatively significant impacts on our emissions. So it's good to see that there is progress and there is room for hope in our drive to get to zero by 2045. So that was very helpful to start to develop that route map in terms of how we progress going forward. So thank you for that. Are there any other comments? Are we happy to agree this report? Agreed. Thanks very much, Andy. Agreed. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, item number 6, write-off of irrecoverable former tenant rents and court expenses. And is it Mark that's taking this? Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. It's a relatively straightforward report, so I'm not going to go into it in any detail. It just sets out a request to approve write-offs of a small sum of money, approximately £100,000. The reasons for that write-off are given within section 3 of the report, and is a standard annual report that does come forward to Cabinet for consideration and approval. Thanks.
Thanks very much. Any comments, questions on this paper? Mark, just I completely agree. This is a normal annual operational report, but good to note that the total amount of write-off has actually reduced this year compared to last year, and that we're all doing as much due process on collections as possible. So thank you very much for that and for the progress year on year. Are we happy to agree the recommendations in this report? Agreed. Thank you. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, item number 7, Overley Pump Track. And who's taking this? Michael McKernan. Michael.
Thanks, Councillor O'Donnell. The purpose of the report is to inform Cabinet of a community-led proposal for the construction of a pump track on an area of Overley Plainfields in Clarkson, and to seek approval to provide match funding for the construction of the facility from the Economic Development Regeneration Capital budget. In terms of background, as members will be aware, local action plans are being developed with input from local communities for towns and neighbourhoods across East Renfrewshire. And these actually form part of the Economic Development Team's approach to community engagement and placemaking. This project underwent extensive community consultation via ourselves and also the Community Council to help inform those priorities within those local action plans. And the provision of a pump track for wheeled play was identified as a priority within those consultations. The estimated budget required for the project is 349,517, which is made up of various sources of funding as well, still to be confirmed. The proposed pump track will provide a new and attractive opportunity for young people and residents in East Renfrewshire to access wheeled play where there's a recognised deficit. The project also fits well within a place to grow in terms of Thrive and Live Well pillars as well. The Cabinet is asked to approve the proposal for a new pump track, which is obviously an undulating circuit for wheeled play at Overley Plainfields, and to approve the match funding commitment of 87379 from the Council's Regeneration Capital budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Pragnell?
Thank you for bringing this report today. I've just got one question, and then obviously as a ward councillor I have a few comments. So can you confirm that the funds for this project is from grant funding and won't have an impact on the council's revenue account?
Yeah, correct. The capital element of the project determines that it's capital funding for this. So we're going through the process of applying to Sport Scotland and other funding grant mechanisms. So hopefully through that process we'll be able to bring together that cocktail of funding for the project to succeed.
Thanks. And I recognise that a lot of hard work has gone on behind the scenes to bring this proposal to Cabinet today. I think it highlights the importance of residents feeding into their local action plans and the benefit of it enhancing our communities. And I think this proposal highlights that local action plans work and the council do listen. So I would encourage at the next round of local action plans for people to feed into them. I think my thanks must go to Netherley and Stamperland Community Council, and in particular their chair Siobhan, who I know has been the main driver of this proposal with the support of the Community Council. They've done a great deal of work from carrying out local surveys to engaging directly with local residents and potential funders. So it just really shows you what a good community council can do, and it should be an example to our other community councils. I mean, this community council alone in the last 2 years have also achieved the first part of the Netherley to Stamperland walkway. So I would urge other community councils to take note about what they can do and working collaboratively with the council. I think it's also fantastic to see that this proposal has had really positive press in recent days, and that can only be a good thing. And I really look forward as a ward councillor and a member of the Cabinet to see how this progresses, and hopefully we'll have a new pump track in the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson?
Thank you, Chair. I first of all want to just echo what Councillor Pragnell's comments. It is a fantastic example of community council taking on the responsibility locally, and with regards to other community councils, I would love to see that replicated elsewhere. And that's a key thing for me. Is like, how can we possibly promote or engage directly, maybe with community councils with this example, even to actually try and inspire them really to and try and do the same elsewhere.
I'll just comment on that. So I think there's probably a number of actions we can be doing. So I think, Councillor Cragnell highlighted, as a good example of the council working with local community, but also with the community council. As this project progresses, for me it's a good example, a good case study. We're also about to go out with a call for proposals for the place-based investment programme, which will be, I think it's a notional allocation of £385,000. So part of that presentation to stakeholders is, we do have a whole range of really good community-led projects, and we also highlight the community council. And this example has been an example of best practice and enter into dialogue with other community councils in terms of helping develop projects and then get to a stage where they can apply for funding.
Excellent, and I'm hoping also, Michael, it might encourage, I know the community council officer is still trying to, there's areas where we don't have community councils, and again it's a great example of a way to, please create one, to the local community.
Thank you.
I think
Louise, would you like to come in?
Yeah, I think Councillor Anderson was asking that I would say something on community councils. So our priority is to get community councils up and running in places that we don't have them, particularly in locality planning areas. So Barrhead, for example, would be a priority. So that's something we're working on just now. Elections due in Busby soon. There will be a leaflet and a social media campaign kicking off within the next week or so, and that's to try and drum up interest in community councils from a wider section of our local population and try and get more people involved in those. We will be meeting with the community council chairs hopefully soon in April to discuss Place to Grow and how they can get involved in that, and we'll be inviting them to the community conference that we're arranging later in April as well.
Thank you, Louise, and that's actually was probably my final comment. It was about that conference and about their presence at it, so great to hear. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm just going to echo the comments of my colleagues. I think this is a great example of what community councils can deliver and should be used as a great example elsewhere in the authority. So well done to them. But also well done to you, Michael, because bringing together all of the different grant funding streams is no mean feat. And it's something that a community council cannot do in isolation. So this is where the partnership working really shows that we can help support communities to deliver on their aspirations. So really well done on that. And I think we all will look forward to getting on our bikes and having in my case, a skateboard, obviously, to be running around that track. So that would be great. So thanks very much, Michael. I think I can safely assume we're all agreed with the recommendations in this report. So well done again. Thank you very much. So moving on to the final item on the agenda, which is item number 8, Cybersecurity Operations Centre, variation of contract proposal, and Louise is taking this paper. Thank you, Louise.
Thank you. So the paper today seeks Cabinet approval to modify an existing contract with one of our current suppliers for provision of cybersecurity operations centres. It seeks to extend the current arrangements and contract with the supplier for a period of up to 24 months. This would be at a maximum cost of £120,000, and that's already within the IT budget plans, so no additional spend there. This service is a critical part of our cyber resilience approach, and there is a need to maintain stability of this service and this essential service as we go through a period of quite substantial IT infrastructure change that we talked to Cabinet about last year. There are also broader changes emerging in the national procurement sector for IT, which given time will enable us to procure this going forward in hopefully a more efficient way with effect contracts. So today's modification to the existing contract will allow time for those frameworks and approaches to take effect. So in summary, Cabinet's asked to approve modification of the existing contract with Quorum Cybersecurity Limited to extend the same for a period of up to 24 months and variation of the contract value in the sum of up to £120,000. Thanks.
Thank you, Louise. Any comments? Councillor Anderson.
Really just to say, I think it's self-explanatory, and I definitely would recommend the agreement on the paper. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that's a good summary of the paper. It's very sensibly positioned. So are we happy to agree the recommendations in this paper? Agreed. Thank you very much. And that brings an end to today's Cabinet meeting. Thank you all very much.